What up, Michael and Angelo? Michelangelo. He's been long dead. I don't give a shit. He still watches these videos, unlike some people. It's what, been 8 days? I didn't want to do this. I didn't have to do this. I'm on vacation. I want to relax. I want to work on the album. Well, what's new? Well, a lot of things are new for me, but what's new in this? What's new here, you know? Nothing. Can you make more of those Paradise? I don't want to. I'm tired of it. I don't want to do this anymore. But here we go. So, as I've been doing a little bit of looking into this, remember how last time I was like, whoa, what was going on in the time of John Milton's life? Well, what was going on then? You may be asking. Shropshire. So, John Milton. Maybe here? I don't know. Born 1608, passed away 1674. I remember how it's like, it seems like this time, there was something about the 1600s. We were coming out of the medieval era, going into this renaissance of like, oh, a revival, if you will. But the 1600s is like this kind of weird divide thing going on. As far as I can understand it, there's like this, as it was coined, Puritan thing going on. And John Milton, as I understand it, might have been a Puritan or was a Puritan. That I cannot really, like, I don't want to just like say, like, and he was a Puritan, like, some sources say it, some don't really say it. So I don't know, but I do know he had a problem with mainstream Protestantism, right? So in his mind, there was something about a Protestant that was no good. And I don't really know what that would be because the context is so gone. So we have the Mr. Milton stuff, right? Now, in that time, that in his life, what was going on in John Milton's life, I recently discovered was called the Stuart era, and I'll read it. Most of his life spanned the Stuart era in England, which included the reigns of James I, Charles I, the English Civil War. How the fuck do you say that word? God, what happened? I just shit my fucking pants again. And the Interregnum, when England was briefly a republic under Oliver Cromwell. So, do we need to go into that? I don't know. We'll find out. And the restoration of Charles II, a period of political and religious upheaval. So this is definitely a fucky time, essentially. And that's kind of where we're at right now, in a sense. In that fucky transitional time, where it's like we have one set of ideas that was shaped by what came before it, and then inside of that, this era are people that don't like it and people that do like it, and they clash, right? This is what humans do. Religious conflicts that were going on there. So there was religious tensions happening in his lifetime as well. It was predominantly Protestant, but there were deep divisions within Protestantism, as usual. Milton himself was a staunch Puritan. I don't know if that's true or not, because I was trying to like, oh, I need sources. And his writings often reflected his religious beliefs, which I don't understand. So we need to figure out what the fuck a Protestant even is. Wow. We need to figure out what a Puritan even is. And the English Civil War was partially driven by religious conflict, with Puritans seeking greater religious freedom and political power. So, in this time, between his life of 1608, like I said, and 1674, the Puritan thing was going on. A lot of them, or a portion of them, went over to the New Americas. Weirdly, my relative was part of this Puritan movement at this time. He himself went he and his family, went over to America to escape prejudicism, right? Oh, I don't know if that's a word. Relax. So this time, it's so crazy. Not only to think about, like, I have a fucking relative with the same last name as me that fucking was like, yeah, let's go. Let's fucking go to America. Like, that's crazy. That's fucking nuts to think about. It's like saying, let's go to Mars, dude. We don't know if we're gonna live. It's crazy. But anyway, that don't matter. It does look like, as I speculated, a time of pretty crazy shit going on. Now, I don't know a whole lot. So it says right here, where did it say? Milton wrote numerous political pamphlets during this period advocating the Republican cause and defending the execution of Charles I. Defending the execution. They executed their fucking king. Damn, dude. 1649. So, you know, nearing the last 20 years of his life. Now that,
Interregnum.
Now that interregnum, after the execution of Charles I, England briefly became a republic. Holy fuck. Known as the Commonwealth of England. And it was led by Oliver Cromwell. During this time, Milton served as a government official and continued to write prolifically on political and religious matters. Remember the kind of stuff that we were really floating on in the past videos, and I'm not going to tell you which ones because I don't remember? Well, the idea that was echoed from that Asha Logos channel, I'm seeing something here, maybe. We have a transitional period between what is this order of mankind and going into these republics or going into these democracies or what other terminology they want to use. Interesting. Like, you know, when you think of the French Revolution and kind of these shifty people that Illuminati types that try to make this happen so they can get everyone under their control. I wonder if this is connected. And I wonder if Milton himself was connected to this in some way, writing propaganda pamphlets and shit. And if that's the case, what was the point of writing this? Like, did he truly write this and say, like, I fucking, like, this is, it means a lot to me and I love it and I always want to tell this story? Or, like, what was his design purpose? Because so far, I could see why the Catholic Church would think it's a bad thing, just merely because he is making a romantic case for Satan. And a lot of the times I hear this Illuminati group that, you know, started taking over the world and subsequently, like, the next 100 years and more, a lot of the times they're considered Satanists. I don't know if that's true or not. It's just some of the shit I hear about it. And what is Satanism if not something like this? Let us explore the depths of Satan's touch on man and Adam and Eve and all that shit. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I thought it was something like the whole, like, war in heaven shit. I don't think that was ever in the Bible, was it? That there was this, like, angelic war and shit. I don't know. I ended up getting this book too, just to help our search, The Origins of Satan, which we'll get to. But I don't see. I'm so confused. I really think there's something more going on. But it's like, I would love to, like, meet people and help me find this shit and see exactly how far this rabbit hole goes. Because something feels fishy. Something feels a bit weird about all of this. And then we're reading this book called Paradise Lost by John Milton, and we're looking at the time in which he lived, and he lived in this tumultuous fucking time where there was, like, monarchy, and all of a sudden, like, collapse that. Now, apparently Oliver Cromwell was like, no, we need to have a republic and shit. And then what happened after that? Like, why did the Puritans leave? And, like, what is it to be a Puritan? That's just, it's insane to me. And I wanted to kind of really talk about this a little bit in the beginning. Like, I wish I could give, like, these cool videos where I'm like laying things out and there's like cool little scenes and animations and stuff, but like I don't got the skill and that's not who I am, so that's fine. But we can talk about all of this stuff and really look into it at the very least. And we'll go for some reading on some internet sites and stuff. So let's get into it. And recording. Here we go. So we're using this right here, this site. I don't know. It's an educational website. Is it the best one? I don't know, man. If you don't like it, go in the comments section why you don't like it. Okay. John Milton. Here's a pic of the guy. As we said, 1608 to 1674. Or 47 if you can't read numbers that right, like I do. Here we go. John Milton was a 17th century historian, journalist, and poet born in December 9th, 1608 in London. London, England, if you didn't know. He was best known for his writing of Paradise Lost. Milton first planned to become a priest. He studied at Cambridge University and afterwards decided to abandon his path to become a full-time writer and poet. I wonder why that would be. Milton became very active in politics and often wrote political pamphlets along with his other writings. As a Protestant who believed in freedom of worship, Milton was often at odds with the Roman Catholic Church. An organization strongly opposed to be Protestant. Eventually, John Milton would work for the English government under Oliver Cromwell after the removal of the monarchy. So, interesting thing just right there alone. That fucking is nuts to think. Like, okay, so you sit here, you want to become this priest, but you have this weird feeling towards the Catholic Church. And from that point, you decide, I want to be a writer, which writing is fucking stupid. So I, do it myself. And after that, you just get politically active. Right? You jump yourself into this idea of politics. Meanwhile, you have your own agenda against the Roman Catholic Church. And so I'm thinking at this time, it would be something along the lines of rebelliousness, kind of like a child does. You see it right now going on when it comes to these activists and all these groups and all these people that are fighting this and that. It's just like children, right? They're just rebelling for rebellion's sake. At this time, we have, we don't want monarchy anymore, so now Oliver Cromwell, he's going to change all that. And you have John Milton saying like, while that's going on, fuck the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church. I want to be a fucking... it's weird because it says he didn't like Protestantism, but as it says right here, as a Protestant, believing in freedom of worship. I don't really know if being a Puritan is a form of Protestantism. I don't even know what a Puritan is, in fact. But it's a flux we're seeing, definitely. Okay? Milton married in 1643 to Mary Powell, but this marriage was deemed a disaster. During this time, Milton began writing about divorce and merits that came along with it. He's like, yeah, okay. These works were denounced by Parliament, and marriage marked some of the harder times in his life. She would die in 1652 during childbirth of one of his 4 offspring with her. Not only would his only son also die that year, but he would also lose his vision. Yeah, because he's fucking was cursed. Milton continued constructing literature during this time, but instead of writing down his work, he would dictate it while a colleague would write it down. And he would marry twice more in his lifetime. God, dude, if your wife died in 52 and you died in 70, in 20 years you married 2 more times, like, chill out. Fuck. Maybe it's you. You know what I mean? Like, sounds like he's kind of someone who was very lost, someone who was very in his own mind and not realizing that, like, dude, that's where the change begins, man. Like, it doesn't begin outside of you, Many of his works have religious, political, and personal themes. For example, instances of imagery of light and darkness and good and evil can be found in several works, including the annotated examples given in the section below. Milton came to face his own battle with the inevitable darkness as he began to lose his sight. In order to keep writing, blah, 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 we already know that part. One of the most well-known of his assistants is a fellow writer, Andrew Marvell. When the monarchy was restored in 1660, Milton was imprisoned, but later pardoned. He spent the rest of his life writing. And then he passed away November 8th, 1674. Interesting. Like a month before his birthday. Almost a month. Golly. Okay, so here's some examples. Well, at least we got some references to this shit. When I consider how my light is spent. Oh my God, here we go. When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in the dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged me useless, though my soul more bent, to serve therewith my Maker, and present my true account, lest he return chide? I don't know. Doth God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask. Patient to prevent that murmur, soon replies. God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts, who best bear his mild yoke. They serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding. Speed and post o'er land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. Wow. He was getting went blind due to glaucoma. Thus not keeping from his writing. Blah blah blah. At first glance, it might seem that Milton is being metaphorical in this sonnet, but looking back at the historical factors of when he wrote this shows that he is talking about the literal lack of light in his life now that he is blind, when he speaks of how his light is spent, and that now his world is very literally dark for him. Milton desired more to serve God, and posits whether it is possible to do work for him in the darkness, and whether God would punish him for not being able to use his poetic talent. This referenced the story in the New Testament of the man who buried his talent, a coin used in Israel, instead of using it to earn more, and he was punished for wasting such an opportunity. That's a fucking Jewy thing. This is similar to Milton's fear about whether he was wasting his talent to write poetry. This is the point when an inner dialogue with himself emerged in the sonnet, when Patience, or his inner voice, responds to this thought by saying God doesn't need the physical works of men. He has his own power and the angels in heaven to do all as he wishes. And that those who stay strong and wait through the trials of their lives will be rewarded in heaven. It seems as if in this sonnet that Milton is working through his personal discouragement as a result of his blindness. And through his faith in God, he helps to lift himself up through the challenges to see the now metaphorical light which God will get him through even this. Really? Huh. Well, so far we know he's a human being. I love that. Methoughts I saw my late espoused saint. Okay. 1658, around this time. Okay. So the death of his second wife. My God. The poem. Methought I saw my late espoused saint brought to me like... Oh, Jesus. Alcestis? Methoughts I saw my late espoused saint brought to me like Alcestis from the grave, whoever that is, whom Jove's great son to her glad husband gave, rescued from the death by force through pale and faint. Mine as womb washed from spot of childbear taint, purification in the old law did save, and such as yet once more I trust to have, full sight of her in heaven without restraint. Came vested all in white, pure as her mind. Her face was veiled, yet to my fancied sight, love, sweetness, goodness in her person shined, so clear as in no face with more delight. But oh, as to embrace me she inclined. I waked, she fled. A day brought back my night. So he saw his wife in a dream. So crazy. A short interpretation of the poem details how a man dreams of a woman coming back from the grave in a dream, and just when she is about to embrace, the narrator wakes losing her. Milton makes a reference to that person, a figure found in one of the great tales of Hercules. Hercules is told to have snatched that person from Hades after her untimely demise and brought her back to her husband, Admetus. Admetus? Yeah. Her husband, Admetus. Like that person, Milton's saint is veiled, though this could be more of less due to his blindness at the time of his second marriage. His blindness in not having actually seen his late wife may also be why, instead of describing the ways that her beauty shines or remarking about recognizing her face, he details that it was her characteristics that shone from her, not actually her physical characteristics. Evidence that this could be his second wife is seen in line 5 when he divulges how his wife died in labor. Man, that'd be so nuts. The last 2 lines are the most important, as not only do they include the twists seen in many English sonnets, but they show more of Milton's emotions and how his blindness has affected him. He details how when he wakes from the dream, that day brings back his night. This works twofold, as one can interpret it from an emotional level and physical level, and another from a more metaphysical level. The first is due to the actual daybreak awakening him to a world where his wife is deceased. This brings back his night, or more aptly named his sorrow. The metaphysical level is more interesting as how it pertains to Milton's blindness. Since he is blind, the natural world is dark to him, but the subconscious realm of the dream, he has vision. Interesting. Now, when exactly was Paradise Lost written? I think that's a really important one there. So we should really look that up. Paradise Lost, epic poem, blah blah blah, in 1667. After all that, after like losing so much, he must have felt like God told him to do this, if he indeed felt that way. You know what I mean? He must have felt like, I have to. Like, I've seen so many trials and I'm being tested. And now God wants me to write this fucking book. I mean, like any writer would say, honestly. That's interesting. God, and he was born when William Shakespeare was still alive. How fucking nuts is that? Wow. I don't know. There's just something about all this. Because, like, we could start going into the world around him, but, I mean, we have a general understanding throughout these times. It was a flux, man. It was fucking crazy. It was like a monarchy was going away and a republic was being replaced. And then a monarchy came back from this new king and he was put on trial. Like, and meanwhile, that shit was going on. The man fucking hated his wife. Luckily, who died. I don't remember. That's the one that died, because I know another one died. Then he lost his sight, lost his wife, lost his child. In the midst of that, was trying to write these stories and shit. And then afterward, he wrote Paradise Lost. That's like fucking... That's tumultuous of the mind. I mean, that's a lot of heartbreak and fucking sadness that are wrapped up in those words. And so that means at this point, he was dictating the story. He was like having someone help him, which, as I know, man, like that makes the writing all the better when you have like someone helping you in certain aspects, whether that's like small little things like you should change this word, or your grammar here should be this, and like, you know, that's whatever, or changing certain aspects of like shifting around story ideas. I don't know. It's fucking crazy to me just to think about like what was going on in his life at that time. There's so much upheaval. Like, I'm not just like alone around in the world. Like, there's like this time of this shit going on, but there's so much upheaval in the soul of man. And so you kind of start wondering, like, why exactly do these things happen? Why do we all shift ourselves together in our own ways? What are we all doing together? Is this something that we're in control of, or is this something that we're not in control of? That's kind of the main thing that determines what we do from that point. That's going to be something to, let's just kind of keep that in our heads a little bit. And then maybe we can move on to the next section that we said we'll do. So previously we just kind of touched on who John Milton was, some aspects of his life. We thought about maybe some interpersonal things with him. And now we've explored a little bit of the world around him. And the question kind of remains, why did he write this? You know, so far it's just like some sort of, it's because of a religious freedom, he felt there was a need to interpret a world and a lore or a like backstory himself. And it's interesting because the Catholic Church, right? So he wants to go into more of what the fall of man was and how it could be, and how Satan himself is merely a reflection of us and his divine will. Because I mean, when we were reading it, there were parts where Satan was sitting there, and some of the shit he was saying about how the lack of God and how they were betrayed and all that, like, and out of spite, just like, let's fucking do exactly the opposite. Fuck this. He's exploring the depths of humanity. So we're starting to walk away from biblical truth, and his transitional period here is walking into the ideas of philosophy being re-explored again, and saying like, no, it's about man and man's thought and the transcendence of our thinking that we need to explore. Whys and hows of mankind, necessarily wrapped in the biblical understanding, but as we know later on, it starts to unravel from that point. So he was within that period of it, of walking away from the truth of God and into the arms of mankind's fucking bullshittery, if you want to call it that. So we'll just let that fester in our heads a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next thing, which is going to be arduous, a very arduous task. And as I said, there were, I don't even know how I'm going to do this, but there were all these like italics words, and on each page there was a certain amount. And what do those italics words invoke? And what do they mean? Some of them, like some of them I don't know what they are. And so that means I'm going to have to go through the fucking book, and I've already wrote them all down per page, but I got to sit here and like, okay, well, the first word is Eden. We know what Eden is, and in the context, we just got to make sure we understand his context of it. Then we move on to the next one. Then we move on to the next one. This one's going to be a lot longer.